All right, we're live.
Sweet. Welcome back, y'all. Well, today we have the story here, the biography to a degree of Thomas Douglas Holman, and there's been a lot of criticism of him lately, and so we kind of wanted to jump in and just to kind of share with you who he is, where he came from, and a little bit about him. And so we're talking about a man who spent his just about his entire life on the front lines of one of the most contentious issues in American history. It's immigration and enforcement. If there's anything that parties disagree on the most, it's the immigration enforcement agencies that we have, as well as the southern border. So this is the story of Thomas Douglas Holman, and a man whose career has been anything but ordinary. So he was born on November 28th, 1961, in West Carthage, New York. Holman grew up in a small town with big ideals about duty, honor, and service. And by the way, right where I'm at right now is pretty close. I'm about 30 minutes from West Carthage, New York. Honestly, Carthage is a nice little town. It's one of the nicer towns around here. So he definitely grew up in a nice town, very homey town. So the village's proximity to Fort Drum, which is where most people work around here, is a significant military installation, influences culture and economic landscape. And yes, it has very much done that. People have now built around Fort Drum. So the presence of military families and the flow of soldiers contributed to a sense of patriotism and duty that permeated daily life. And I guarantee you that, 30 years ago, it's not as patriotic as it used to be. But if you hop back a few years ago, it was a very patriotic area.
Mm.
So after graduating from Carthage Central High School, he embarked on a journey that would see him rise from a local law enforcement officer to the face of America's immigration policies. So his first stop was the U.S. Border Patrol in 1984. It was here that he first encountered the complexities of illegal immigration, families seeking better lives, smugglers exploiting the desperate, and system straining under its own weight.
Mm.
And so, as we kind of talk about the border here, if you have people that live in Texas or in those states along the southern border, it's pretty easy for them to let you know that there is a problem. It's not hard for them to see it at all, and so it's definitely an issue that's got to be addressed.
Yeah. So during the 1980s, though, I mean, there was a massive influx of undocumented immigration from Central America due to political instability from countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua. So as a result, the Border Patrol faced, pressure particularly along the south border. Um, this is kind of where people got a little bit smart, and so they were confronting, an escalating wave of human trafficking, drug smuggling, organized crime. Um, and I think what a lot of people don't think about, or at least how the situation was on the border back then, was there was a lot of like physical surveillance and manual tracking. So using footprints in the sand, rudimentary motion detectors. So we didn't have back then like drone surveillance, infrared cameras that we do today. So a lot of it was like, you know, you had to be a good tracker. You had to be watchful on the border back then.
Yeah, speaking of those drones that they have now, I actually flew my first drone. I think it was a couple weeks ago, and I was super excited about it. The thing had infrared on it, and I flew it up above the forest, and it could literally track us through a forest and follow us. Incredible drone, like $1,600. You could get this drone for um, just surveillance and view you through the forest at night. So pretty
Wow.
incredible technology that they have. It was such a blast to fly it, but yeah, we have so much greater technology now that we can monitor that thing. But Holman wasn't content with just patrolling the border. In 1988, he joined the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS, as a special agent. Now, if you think that chasing down cartels and criminal networks sounds intense, you're probably right. Um, for decades, Holman took on some of the most dangerous elements, trafficking in humans and narcotics across the border. He earned his stripes not just as an enforcer, but as someone who understood the human stories driving migration. And so I think a lot of people don't understand, that they're when they're human trafficking and when they're bringing narcotics across, it's not like they're just. I mean, sometimes it is. They're just sitting in a vehicle trying to quietly get through. Some of it's through a field, but a lot of times these people aren't the nicest of people. I mean, they're armed or they're dangerous, and so you've got to watch out for them. So it's not just a guy trying to smuggle a backpack in. So fast forward to 2013, Holland was named Executive Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations, also known as ERO, at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. This is where things get even more intense. So, if ICE is the tip of the spear in immigration enforcement, Holman was the one sharpening it. Under his leadership, the agency arrested and deported thousands of undocumented immigrants, focusing on those with criminal backgrounds. And I think that's a good thing to point out is that he's focusing on those. There's a focus on the more dangerous people that come across illegally than the ones that don't. And so, and I think that should be a good focus point. We don't want everybody else's criminals. So
Mm,
in 2017, his career hit the national stage when President Donald Trump appointed him acting director of ICE. Suddenly, Holman wasn't just enforcing immigration laws, he was defending them under the hot lights of Congress and relentless media scrutiny. And if you've ever seen a video of him, you will see him very fiery, very many fiery exchanges with lawmakers, where he passionately argues for stronger border security. Some of them have become viral moments. Love him or hate him, Holman's conviction is undeniable of what he wants. Um, but who is he beyond the badge? He's a man who's faced threats, controversy, a public outcry, yet he's also been awarded for valor, including the Presidential Rank Award for his contribution to public service, which I believe he has roughly, I could be wrong on this, but somewhere close to 40 years of service um, in law enforcement. He's a husband, he's a father, and someone who firmly believes in the rule of law. President-elect Donald Trump has appointed Thomas Holman as the border czar, entrusting him with the comprehensive oversight of the U.S. border control operations. In his new role, Holman's expected to lead the administration's efforts in implementing stringent immigration policies, including mass deportations. He has proposed initiatives such as a weekly White House briefings to update the public on the number of illegal immigrants arrested and deported, emphasizing transparency and enforcement actions. So Holman often speaks about his role in immigration enforcement as more than a job, it's a calling. He sees his work as ensuring national security, protecting vulnerable populations, and upholding the rule of law, often citing his pride in being able to make a tangible impact on the safety of the country, which I think is very important. Um, I think it's important to use like a house analogy here too, where you know you want to keep your house safe. You don't just want anybody coming in and out of your house. And when you think of the United States as that, you think of, okay, we've got to make sure that we are blocking the bad people from coming in. We want the good people to come in, but
yeah.
we want them to come in legally. We want to know who they are. You don't just let strangers into your house that you don't know, especially when you have a family. So it's very common sense stuff here. Um, his call to service and duty. He grew up a Catholic, I believe, and I believe that he would still claim that he's a Catholic. But in Romans chapter 13:4, it says, "For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, or avenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil." This verse underscores the moral responsibility of those in authority to enforce justice and to maintain order, principles central to Homan's career in law enforcement. And if you notice anything about him and really followed him, you'll know that he's hard on criminals and he's not as hard on people that just, you know, came across illegally, they're here illegally. Those people don't normally get as bad as treatment as someone that's coming over here and breaking the law um, and doing evil things. Number two, protecting the vulnerable. Open thy mouth for the dumb and the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Holman has spoken about the importance of protecting those exploited by human trafficking or left vulnerable by weak border security. So this verse reflects his focus on justice for the defenseless. Now, while maybe this exact verse isn't going through Holman's mind while he's doing his job, but his upbringing in faith and and in the Word of God and in a church at least has laid a foundation of truths and morals and uh, purpose in life for him to follow. And so, strength and perseverance in trials. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. In a career often marked by public criticism and controversy, Holman Holman draws on a resilience to stand firm in his convictions. And if you've seen him be addressed in Congress or just by the news media, they're not easy softballing questions to him. These are difficult questions, and they're not very nice about asking them. And so it's a very difficult crowd to stand up
Mm.
to and answer questions. So this verse reminds him and others of the strength that comes from faith. And so we have leading with integrity. Micah chapter 6, verse 8. He hath showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. And so this verse resonates with Holman's vision of balancing justice with compassion, particularly when making difficult decisions about immigration policies that affect individuals and families. And I think this is where a lot of people get caught up on Holman and don't like him as much, is because, yeah, at the end of the day, you hope not to separate a family, but sometimes that's what takes place. And so it's never something nice to separate a family. But at the same time, you have to be careful because we have to protect the families here in the U.S. as well, and we never want those families to be separated by someone illegally coming over here and doing something illegal, murder, drugs, or something that causes our family to fall apart. And so there's a there's a fine line there. So Psalms 82:3-4 says, "Defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked." So Holman's work, especially in combating human trafficking and illegal exploitation, aligns with his biblical call to protect the vulnerable and uphold righteousness. And I think you see that. I think you see that in his upbringing in church. Um, he said something in an interview one time that was pretty funny. He said that they would always go to mass every Sunday, and he always prayed for the people that sat in their spot. And so um, it's kind of funny there if you know a little church
That's
background.
oh, yeah, that's my seat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my seat, buddy. Yeah. And so I guess he had mentioned that his mother did not like it very much when people sat in their pew. And so it was kind of funny. But yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool story.
Well, if
Oh,
I could chime in on that as a thought, with Holman being placed in the position that he's in, he fully realizes America's mandate that was voted for to put President Trump in place, and then President Trump putting him in place. There's a reason for all of this, and I believe that it's for the good of the country. It's for the good of U.S. citizens, and we need to realize that. And I think he's going to play a major part in that.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure.
I agree. So I mean, it'll be we can revisit this character in in a year or two and see the progress made.
I think lastly
Oh
too,
yeah.
he has publicly stated that one of his priorities, next to going after the gangs, is this is also something that President Trump has said, that he is going to do his very best to find those 325,000 missing children that have come in and cannot be found, um, for whatever reasons that they have been placed in positions that jeopardize their life, their livelihoods, their souls. And I believe that goes back to his faith, that he is definitely going to pursue and define where these children are.
Yeah, I think a lot of people today look at him. I know a lot of people do, because I've even talked to people that are that lean Republican on this guy, and they even question sometimes his ethics and his and the way he does things. And so I would encourage people to just say, just watch him for the next 4 years. He's going to be there for the next 4 years. There's nothing we can do to change that. There's nothing anybody can do to change that. Watch his character, watch what he does, watch how he handles things, because he's not an inhumane person. You can tell that he's human, he cares for people, um, and he's going to try to do the best that he can with reducing the amount of harm that's already there. And so I really think that that's true about this guy. As much as tough as he puts himself out there to be, he grew up in New York, so New York, everybody has a tough looking face. Nobody smiles here. So I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. But you know,
Well,
let his character, let his decisions and his choices determine what you think about him.
all right. Well, that's all for Thomas Douglas Holman. We'll pick a new person, and we will be back next week. So, see you guys. I don't know if you guys can see stats, but we had like